Picked the wrong week and quit sniffing glue.
Morning, welcome back. It is week 3 on the 1-2 Sucker Punch build. The final week. I have every confidence this will be the final week. And as usual, I will start a Monday morning report with things I did over the weekend. Things I did over the weekend, Chapter 1. I started playing with eye painting. And this is a defective part that I cannot use. This is a Sweet Pea head. That is not the final Sweet Pea head. Here is the final Sweet Pea head, and you can see she's got that Village of the Damned thing going on with her eyes right now. But I wanted to. This is the best test bed for painting the eyes because it's the actual part, or it is a copy of the actual part. So I quickly just dashed out, and I'm shocked and amazed how quickly I went on the eyes. Now, forgive all of this Harley Quinn Joker mess going on around the outside. Concentrate on just that much. That's a pretty darn good eye. And I have to tell you that 90% of that, 60% of it, 60% of that is in the sculpt. It's in the file. It's tough to see. I'll show you on this one. But not only are the pupils and the irises indicated with the proper size and the orientation, which is, that's half the battle right there. Is they've already done that work of showing you how big the irises need to be, and what direction you're looking. And it's the case on both of these, where Rocket's very definitely looking over at this angle, looking over in this direction. That helps tremendously. That's a wonderful ground start. But I like both of those eyes. They don't necessarily work together, but that's a very good eye. That's a very good eye. So, like I said, don't mind all of this stuff. I think the secret is to get it right the first time and not to put too many layers of paint down. But I think we're gonna have some really good success on those eyes, just given that and how quickly that went. The second thing I did this weekend was watch the film again, or watch bits of the film again, and not trying to, hyper-analyze anything, because these kits are idealized versions of the actresses in costume. They are not accurate down to the last stitch. There are quite a few things that are different. But we're going to take this as a Sucker Punch based figure. I was looking at the Sweet Pea's big sword scabbard, and hoping against hope that there was some sort of color to it, but no, it's black. The tip here and these accents seem to be chrome, bright metal. So yeah, I was hoping I was going to be able to find a color to use on this, but there is no color. It's black. And then it fits on her back like that, and then her rifle fits on the model or in the kit. It's across like that. In the movie, it's much more like this. The angle is much steeper. So I'm gonna change the angle. I'm gonna shave down this pin so that I could put the gun at a better angle and it's not sticking way out. That was job one. I also realized that, yeah, Rocket's hair is a lot more red than I had done. In the not in the scenes in the asylum where she is her normal self, it is not as red. I think the color is heightened for the fantasy sequence. And since she's dressed in her fantasy costume, then I will go ahead and bump up the red a little bit. So I did that. And then the third thing is I went out and I found these name tags. Now, the artist who created all of these, is a man named Moonju Kim. Moonju Kim? No, sorry. Moonju Lee. Moonju Lee. And if you look out on Facebook Moonjoo, Moonjoo, and then Lee is his last name. He's a artist in Korea who has done all of these works and sells the files to print these. I went up to his page just to see if there was any update. It looks like Blondie might be the next one, but I don't have any idea when that will be. That was the Vanessa Hudgens character. Hopefully that will be the next one, and it'll be fairly soon, I would hope. Anyway, I was checking on it, and I saw where he had put out these name tags just as freely distributed files. So I went and downloaded the big Sucker Punch logo, which is drying in the other room, and then these individual names that are done in the same font, which are beautiful, and they're meant to fit the circumference of the bases. So I'm going to be painting up those this week, along with everything else. But today's job, the first thing I want to do is to finish up these hands and get that on the torso of Sweet Pea. Okay, doing serious work on the eyes now. And the eyes are something that you can really... I'm not speaking as any sort of expert here. Lord knows I've done far more warp nacelles than I've done eyes. But you can psych yourself out of. You can really build them up as some all-important, all-intimidating thing. And I have found that, you know, just starting them is the hard part. And then once you do that, you can... just treat it like a normal thing and not put too much pressure on it. Now, here's where we're sitting. Here's Rocket's eyes. Now, working on the colors. Now, it makes sense. These two characters are sisters. They would have the same eye color, which is sort of a greenish brown. I have seen all kinds of retouched photos and all kinds of recolored eyes, everything from bright blue to dark brown, but this brownish green is where I'm coming down. I guess that would be a hazel. It's where I'm coming down on, and her face is much more, I'm not going to say plain, it's not nearly as weathered, not nearly as dark complected as Rocket's is, and I may end up trying to introduce some color into her cheeks, but so much of her face is framed by her hair that you don't see a lot of what's going on the sides. But I've got to a point where I'm really happy with these, and I really want to stop for right now, because I'm afraid that if I press on through that I'm liable to make a mistake. So learning to leave well enough alone is the first lesson. We're gonna come back to this in a minute after I've had some time to digest what it's doing, and let all of this paint dry, because walking over top of wet paint is a recipe for disaster on something this small. I still have yet to do the black smokiness of all of this. I think what I'd like to do is to first I have to define the pupils there and get the blacks in to where I like them, and then I'll put a gloss over top of that before I try the eye makeup itself. Get the eyes right and then worry about doing the makeup over top of them. Okay, call me crazy, but I kind of like that. I think that turned out just fine. And maybe the secret is, tell Lou to make nice, sharp eyeliner, and then it ends up turning out like that. But yeah, I think that'll do. I think that'll be fine. The black line, the smoky eye, really added to it, because before that there was not that much dimension going on in there, and that contrast is really helpful. I need to see whether I need to paint in a highlight, or whether the clear, which is just your old favorite Tamiya clear, over top of the eyes, whether they're big enough to give me the highlight that I want, or whether I need to paint a white one in there. Also using clear over the lips. But yeah, I mean, the face looks kind of dirty, but in all fairness, they were in those fantasy sequences. They were not clean, pretty runway models. I need, of course, I've oversprayed on the black collar there, so that's got to be re-blacked. But I got to tell you, I'm willing to step away from this one. Working on Sweet Pea now. I've got one eye smokied, and the other eye I'm just starting on. I think that's giving me the look that I like. Okay, it's been an intensive day, but I think I'm ready to stop. I got both eyes done on Sweet Pea. Now, I'll tell you, and without any reservation, that the likenesses on these two kits are not as good as the likeness on Baby Doll, and I think it's because Emily Browning has a very distinctive face, and it's easy to get that right. But both Abby Cornish and Jenna Malone, who are beautiful women, don't get me wrong, but their face, maybe Jenna Malone is a little bit easier to capture. Abby Cornish is a beautiful woman, but she's got a face that's not all that distinctive. I mean, there's no feature that you can hang your hat on. Emily Browning has like rather prominent cheekbones that you could hang your hat on. Not that you could hang your hat on her cheekbones, but you know what I'm saying. There's something there that you can work off of, and you know, that's just the way with some people. I know for a fact, for many years of trying myself, that whenever you're painting Star Trek characters, it's much easier to paint Mr. Spock than it is to paint Captain Kirk. Nimoy has more distinctive features. Spock has more distinctive features. Shatner has a very bland face. And when it comes, and no action figure or very few paintings have ever captured it correctly. It's just a fact of life. And so I'm going to do some cleanup here, but I think we've got a very good likeness going there, and I'm very happy with that. We're going to let that dry. I may come back, put one more coat of the gloss over the eyes and lips. It is my normal closing time for the afternoon, so I think we're going to shut down. I may go over the guns one more time. I did decrease that angle. It's not as much as a straight cross as it was. It was more of almost a 90-degree X, and I've shortened that up a bit. But now that these two things are glued together, I can go back inside and paint on the details a little bit more. So folks, welcome back. It's Tuesday. Working more on Sweet Pea today because Rocket's mostly done. Had a stellar day yesterday. Just a stellar day. I'm very happy with both the faces for Sweet Pea and for Rocket. Now, there's only so much you can do as far as likeness goes. I mean, if it's not there in the sculpt, painting it isn't going to make it happen. So, you know, it's true that the face doesn't look a lot like Jenna Malone, but it doesn't. That's the nature of the sculpt. I did what I could do. So I'm going to touch up a little bit more, just clean up a couple of lines here and there, but mostly I'm happy, particularly with that smoky eyeshadow. The eyes and the lips have a gloss on them. I'm not going to add any artificial white highlights because the gloss is picking up the highlights and where they would be, you know, when the light shines on it. Maybe do a little bit more dry brushing around her ears because they're lacking some contrast, and touch just the bow of her lip there. But she's mostly done. Very happy with her. And I redid the back of the hair yesterday because I had the roots too dark. So I made it match more of what was going on with the front of the hair. So we're happy with that. I'm to the point where I'm very happy with the face. I actually don't want to screw anything up. So I'm to that stage, you know, one more step might screw it up. So I think I'm trying to keep myself back from doing anything more on her. So I'm going to distract myself with other things and then come back and see if it's really needed. I don't think it is. So we are going to put that aside. I've been working on fitting the duster to the hips, which is why I've got that out front and center today. And it kind of goes on with a twist and then settles on it. I also had to redo the weapons. Not redo completely, but I noticed that on the prototypes and on the site where they show the mock-up of this figure, they have the weapons in a different orientation than I want to use. And I'm going by a photo reference that showed the stock of, well, let's get up here, that showed the stock of the rifle over her left shoulder and the hilt of the scabbard over her right shoulder. So that's the way I want to go. It's the same picture that I used for the makeup reference. You can see the, well, this camera is increasingly awkward. Let me move some stuff around. That's better. Move the camera up a little bit. What I had was a photo reference that showed basically this pose. That showed this stock coming up over this shoulder and this coming at the back, although it had the sword actually in there rather than in her hand, that you could see the hilt of the sword coming out. So that's the way I've chosen to do it. And I know the photo wasn't flipped or anything because it had the bare arm on this side. So that's the pose I'm going to use. And actually that's the pose that works best with the other characters, especially since Baby Doll has to stand like right next to her. I don't want the rifle coming way out the way it had. I like the way everything here is resting. It looks more natural. I believe the mock-up has them flipped, and that's not the way I like it. So there, I'm doing it my way. This was simply a square peg back here, so I could do it any way I want to. I think they had it like that with the scabbard going down that side, and that just wasn't the way. I wasn't having it. I just didn't like it that way. I like it much better like that with the two handles up at the top. So there, I'm going to make myself happy with the back of this to make sure that I am liking how it's resting. I'm going to glue the duster down to the hips, and then I can start doing the last bits of construction, including putting the shoulder piece on, and then the big work will be to glue in the arms. And then once the arms are glued in, I can kind of make sure the sword is standing straight up. This is something I can adjust as I need to. And then it's just a matter of popping the head in and we'll be done. Yay! Okay, at this point there are no small construction bits. I'm getting ready to do the big joining here between the hips, which, as Shakira is famous for saying, don't lie, and the top of the duster here. So got the 1 minute epoxy out. This is a weird little twist and bend joint here, and we are just going to sink this in to the epoxy, and we're going to see how much it actually is touching and how much of it isn't. We're going to add more epoxy to where we need it. We're using up the last of this particular tube of 1 minute epoxy. Another little twist and shout. Twist and shout. And we're going to let it sit like this, so that any glue that dries or epoxy that wants to ooze does not ooze down and out, but stays in the joint. So we're running into a problem where a lot of this apparently isn't touching, so we're just going to let it sit like this. Now I just find some way of bracing it upside down like this, so all points necessary are making contact. Okay, it's time for the next big step. Well, at this stage, everything is a big step. Like I said, we're getting down to the final bits of construction, but it is finally time to put the arms on. I've mixed up some 5-minute epoxy. It's this bit right here that needs to be added, and I am going to generously smear the epoxy around the elbow here. It's to the point now where I want to fix a lot of the spot paint dry, the paint dollops, but until I put the arms and stuff on, I don't know how much of those are going to be seen, so it's a question of why worry about it if it isn't going to be seen. But we're going to go ahead and put that in, because also in the last bits of construction you can end up screwing up something that will need fixing, so you might as well hold off and fix it all at one time. I am going to take her back off of her base and stand her up like that, so that any glue dripping, gravity is not working against me, it's working with me, and the glue is going to want to stay down in that pocket. The last thing here to do would be to put the right arm in, and that'll be the next step, but we're going to hold off until that is good and set up. Okay, we're ready for the next step. These arms are nice and secured. I think the next step is going to be that we need to put this arm in, the right arm. We're going to sit it in like that. So I'm going to mix up some more epoxy and get it ready to be glued down. And then we'll put her back up on the stand. Alrighty, we are rounding the final corners on the Sweet Pea build here. I've got shoulder piece on, I've got both arms in, I've got the torso down to the hips. Not glued to the base because I hesitate to glue any of them to the bases. I've got the head ready to go, it's just not in yet. I suppose the last thing I could do, well, I still can't bring myself to signing off on that face. The last thing to do is to glue the hair down, but I'm not ready to make that final step yet. I suppose I could glue the sword in, but that probably needs to be the last thing after the head is in and all of that is done, is to knock that sword down. One last bit here is about the sword, scabbard, and gun that could go on the back here. That could go in, and that would be a nice place to finish it up for the day, so maybe we do that now. I've decided against it. Changed my mind. I am allowed to do it, so I will. No, the thing is, there are some seams to fill and some puttying to do, and it's simply going to make that a whole lot harder to do that with these guys in place, since they're going to have to go on like that. There's some work around the back that I would like to touch up before I'm ready to nail these guys down. So right in here there's a little bit of putty work, and right on the back of her arm there's a little bit of putty work. So we're going to do those little fine touches before we finish up. There is that kind of work to do on both figures, and I really need to start doing that. But the problem is that I don't want to. Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday. It's touch-up day, and what I'm doing is I'm going back with the flat black, and I'm just touching up the joints, like this glue joint on Rocket's shoulder there, or her upper arm, where the two pieces meet. Remember, we had some issue with the epoxies coming up out of there. Well, I've just painted over that little bit of epoxy that I couldn't clean out, and it cleaned up that joint, makes it look more intentional, and also gives you a good terminus for the netting, for the fish nets. And I'm going around doing the same thing on this right arm as well. That's one thing about these kits, there's no end to the amount of black paint you're going to use. The tricky part is keeping your black straight, knowing where the flat black was, knowing where the semi-gloss black was, knowing where the gloss black is. That's the tough part. And we're just getting ready to button up Sweet Pea here on the top so that we can put the heads in. That's really the last thing to do on either of these. Well, that's not true. Sweet Pea also needs her weapons on the back attached, and then she needs the her head. Then she needs to get her head straight. I'm still working on the eyelets and stuff in the laces, trying to keep those cleaned up. And I don't know for the life of me why this is happening, but I did something yesterday that has had ramifications and repercussions, and that is I did a little bit of sanding on the top of the hips before I attached the duster, and it kicked up a lot of dust from the parts, and that dust got everywhere, and it dried into a fine white powder that is on everything. And as much as I have tried to clean everything off and paint over it, that white powder is making my life a not a living nightmare, because that's over dramatic, but it's making a difficulty. It's making an annoyance. So we're going to take care of that. I've just spent a few minutes here working on some gap closing and some mismatch fixing, and this is the fun stuff because it's sculpting. Take some epoxy sculpt, and basically I had a joint here that had a big gap that on a normal model, a normal resin kit, this would have been molded flat with no undercut. You wouldn't have been able to see back behind the flap of the duster. So that's basically all I did, is I just flattened out that joint with some epoxy sculpt, and I can go back in and paint that black like the edge of the duster here, and I won't have to worry about trying to match any skin tones. That's my biggest fear, is making sure that anything that I do is not going to require me to repaint the skin. If I can get away with it with all blacks, then I'm happy. So I did that. Also did this nasty joint at the top of the leg here where it didn't quite meet flush. And again, I can just paint the top of that like the top of the black boot, and then we'll be good. And that's pretty much, oh, there was one other one up here on the shoulder that didn't quite meet up. So I filled that in. And once those have dried, I can touch up the black on those, and that's pretty much all she wrote for Sweet Pea here. The last thing to do would be to add the head and the sword. And once the head is in, which is this bit here, once I put that in and get it glued, then I can set the bottom of the sword and hold it straight while it cures. It's something like this, but there's not much of a joint there to hold it. So I want to make sure that it is not, or that it is, you know, in there nice and straight. It's not leaning back and it's not leaning forward, but I want to have the head in first. So really, the only thing stopping me from finishing the head is gluing the hair down and closing up this center part. And I'm stalling. I'm to that point where, you know, once you do that, you can't go back from it. And I'm kind of hedging my bets, wondering if I have finished everything that I think that I have finished. Alrighty, so I just finished up. I put a burnt metal, or sorry, a pale burnt aluminum Vallejo metal color over top all of these name plates. And I think the next thing I'm going to do is, well, after these dry, of course, is that I'm going to cover them with the color shifters. And I may do each one a different color, who knows. I've got 1, 2, I think those are the same one. No, this is green gold, this is gold pale blue, and this is gold pale. I knew I had a duplicate of one. Yeah, this is the one that's duplicate. So I've got 1, 2, 3. There's 4 different colors. What do you know? I've got 3 names and the big one. So I've got enough to do each one a different color. And then probably I'll just go back in and hand paint this bracing out, paint it a different color, maybe black or something to make the lettering stand out. Okay, so I didn't like how it turned out. Didn't like how the small names were turning out, so I picked the 3 colors of color shift that I had that are drastic. They are there's nothing subtle about them, and I went ahead and painted them up this way, and they still give me the reflective and the color shifting that I want, but they look more of a piece that way. I just need to find a good blue, and I don't think I've got that pale gold blue. I just don't think that's doing it for me. So I'm going to try to find some other, maybe try another coat of this pale gold blue on this and see if it gets it any better. If not, I just may have to leave it silver. Okay, so I'm getting ready to deem Rocket's head to be done. I just finished touching up the hair a bit, and I sprayed everything with a flat coat to minimize brush strokes and all that kind of stuff. That does mean I have to go back in with the clear and retouch the lips and the eyes, but that's an easy 2-second thing to do. That's no problem at all. So we're going to sit this to dry, the clear coat to dry, and get back to working on the base. Now there are I've gone back in and I've painted around the lettering so that you can get an idea. I don't know exactly yet how these are going to be used. They're made to go on the extended base. All of these bases are meant to be extended down, but that's just, to me, a lot of wasted resin and print time. So I never printed the extended base. I only printed the top panel, or the top skin. The actual base is about 1 inch tall, and it sits down in front of it. But I think I'd rather find, go to a Lowe's or a hardware store, see if I can find a wooden blank that is that size, rather than spending all that time and resin printing something. So I don't know exactly how those are going to be used. The temptation is to put them on the front of the base like this. Let me grab the camera. I'm trying to keep it nice and smooth. Camera motions would be to put it on the base like that at some sort of jaunty angle. But I don't know. This is what they looked like after I painted them so that you could see the individual lettering. Of course, this kind of flies in the face of my long-standing Halloween contest rules. That is, if you have to put the name of the thing in front of what it is you have painted, then you were not very successful in painting it. But I'm willing to believe that there may be enough people out there who might recognize Sucker Punch but not know the characters' names. So that's why I am opting to do that. Also had the big old, the medium-sized riding belt sander out, and I slammed the Nazi head against it, sanded that flush so that it will now lay flat on the base. Don't know what kind of rubble or anything I'm going to put around there. Might have some viscous fluid, or viscous fluid. I used to call it viscous fluid. Might have some goo and gunk sticking out of the bottom of that. I'm not going to get as graphic as to make it all, look like actual meat and blood and human carnage, but I might do some zombie carnage there. I just have to figure out exactly what angle that's going to sit at, something like that, so that you can see the busted lens. But we're down to the very small things, like finishing up these bases. I think the next thing I'm going to do is glue the hair on Sweet Pea. Okay, this is fun. I've taken some 15-minute epoxy and I dumped in some slimy grime light and some streaking grime, and I whipped them into a frenzy, and as it started to set up I laid it on the base. Now it looks like well, the term used to be called baby snot or baby diaper. It is, I don't know how long it's going to take for it to cure. I'm going to give it the 15 minutes, but what I'm done is make it look like it's oozing out of the helmet. I don't know if I want to try to put any chunks in it. I think that might be a little gratuitous. I don't know. We'll find out. Maybe as this starts to set up, I'll try to shape it a little bit. But I think that's going to dress up things. I've dirtied down the mask. I put a wash over it again. I used the epoxy here to kind of set it in place. I like it. It's it's gruesome. I'm wondering if I could mix up something similar that was more of a flesh color, but I really don't want to get into the, making it look too realistic or too gruesome. These should be fantasy figures. They should have fantasy glop in them. They shouldn't have red blood and, skin and bones type of thing. It's okay if the gals had a cut, that would be red blood. But these should be inhuman things that they're fighting, so they shouldn't have blood and guts. That would remove the moral ambiguity of what they're doing. So, yes, they should have guts, but they shouldn't be recognizable human guts. I'll just make a few dribbles here of the slime. The nice thing about the paint is it also thickened up the epoxy so that it's not, it's not self-leveling. It's not, finding its own small level there. Maybe before it sets up, I'll tilt it back up like this so that it doesn't flatten out. It's got enough going on underneath there to glue the helmet in place, but that could be gruesome. That could be gruesome. Alrighty, the hair has been glued in. You cannot pull this hair out now. So that's going to need to have a flat coat put over top of it because the epoxy is glossy. We don't like that, so we're going to be putting just a spritz of the flat coat over top of that. Do that in the morning. The last thing for my last trick of the day, I think I'm going to go ahead and glue in these weapons. Glue in the weapon back. I started touching the paint on the areas where I put some epoxy sculpt on this afternoon, and I'm going to let that dry. I still have the tiniest touch with the tiny brush to do at the very perimeter there, but I've got it painted over top of this sleeve here and around here. I think it's looking a whole lot neater and cleaner, I have to tell you that. And this back part is looking particularly good, where there was a big gap there. That gap is all gone. It might behoove me to run out and get some more gloss black. I'm out of the gloss. Well, you know, I probably could just paint that over with the clear gloss. That might take care of that to make it match the rest of this. But yeah, let me do this last bit. Attaching, and call it a day. Actually, it has to go like that. So just have to figure out what the best adhesive is going to be. I think it's going to be if it's anything like putting the two weapons together, I ended up putting some of that steel stick epoxy in there to hold them together. So I might want to get out a small ball of that. Actually, I could probably just CA it and then pack some of that epoxy around it. Welcome back, everybody. It's Thursday. It's the gateway to the weekend. It's a day of industry. All the tools are working today. You can hear the plotter plotting in the background. It's always spending its time plotting. And over on the other side of the room, you can hear the printer printing. And that's because I am still noodling ideas for the bases. Now, I really like the fact that it all started with Sweet Pea. She's the instigator. Sweet Pea comes with this wonderful base where it has a robot with its head crushed, and I've added stuff to it. I added, fluid leaking out of it and wires and all that. Was going to light it, but then I went, nah, that's too much. And then that got me to thinking about poor Rocket. She's got nothing on her base, so I downloaded and printed a mock-up of a Nazi head, Nazi gas mask zombie, and that looked good. And that left me with poor baby doll. Way back at the beginning, her base was empty. She had nothing. She was bereft of subject matter, and so I thought, it's time to give baby doll something. So I thought, okay, well, what's baby doll known for fighting in the movie? Well, she's known for fighting everybody because she is. You are supposed to think she is the main character of the movie. She is the star of the movie, but she is not. It is Sweet Pea who is the secret star of the movie. Yeah, spoiler for a 10-year-old movie. 10-plus-year-old movie. But anyway, it all turns out to be Sweet Pea's story in the end anyway. So, I was thinking, what could I do for baby doll? And I was thinking, well, she fights that big samurai. But then that's just another helmet. That's just another head in a helmet, and I've already got that with the Nazis. So I looked at when I was watching the film the other day, I noticed that she also has that big fight with the baby dragon, where they have to get the fire, so they cut the sleeping baby dragon's head off, and rip out the two stones, the crystals that make fire. So that got me to think, well, that's something different. That's a head. It's in the same motif as the rest of them, but it's not a human head. So that's why the printer is printing. I found a nice free version of a dragon that is certainly not the actual dragon from the film, but then again, so much of these kits are inspired by the film, but not actually, slavishly devoted to being the film. So I'm printing out a couple of heads, one facing in one direction and one facing in the other, because I'm not quite sure which one I want yet. So those are going to print out. I've got another 3.5 hours on those before they're ready to go. Sweet Pea is all but done. I've got to touch up just the top edge of these stockings with a tiny, tiny fine brush so that you don't see any of the white epoxy sculpt, but that's looking good. The only other thing left to do is to glue her head noggin in. Very happy with how that turned out. Last night I put the hair on, sprayed it with a flat coat of a flat spray. All of the indications of the epoxy are gone, so that's ready to glue in. I did all the touch-up on the seam work yesterday. There's a little bit of work I could do on these weapons, but really the last thing to do is to glue her head in and then situate this blade so that it's nice and straight up. And those are the last things I'm going to do today, so let's get to it. And the first dragon heads are out of the printer. What do you think of that? It's nice. It's got the spines on it, the right type of dragon. It's not a Chinese dragon, but it's a little small. It's a little wee. I sized it up against the baby doll's hand because in the movie she puts her hand around his neck and then slices, and it's about that size, but when I put it on the base it was kind of small. So what the heck, I'm going to print a little bit larger one and see which one I like better. Okay, it's getting the end of the day and I haven't been too very productive because I've been plotting plots and printing prints, and I need to go ahead and get the lady her head in her socket. So let's mix up some epoxy and take care of these last two steps, and that will leave tomorrow to work on final touches and the dragon head for the baby doll base. So let's finish this up. Mixing up epoxy. La-di-da-di-da. Finding my stirring stick. Here we go. And you can't see any of this because it's not on camera. Well, I'll just leave it up here because watching me mix epoxy is about as fun as watching paint dry. Okay, so we've got the positive plug here, and I want to make sure that I am avoiding anything that might splooge up along the outside because I've got all these delicate painted surfaces that I don't really want to touch. I think everything is good. So we're just doing a little touchy touch here, a little touchy touch there, and then, oh, now the plotter stops. Sure, now that I'm doing this work, the plotter stops. Trying to make sure that it does not ooze. I do not want it to ooze out. Just sit in there. If it fills a gap, that's nice, but that's all I really want it to do. And then the last thing is, if I can do this at the same time because I've got just enough left over, is I will set the blade in her hilt and make sure that it is straight up and down. Like I said, when I printed it, it came out with a little bit of a bend in it, or a little bit of a warp, and I want to make sure that I am not accentuating that warp, because there's actually a way that I can put it in that the warp will work against it. That's the way. I like it. So that's the final bit. Let me check the alignment side to side. And I want to check it on the hilt to make sure that it is straight up and down. That looks good. That's in. Well, it looks like it's flying out. Oh, that's why, because it is. I just have to keep a firm grasp on it. And there's your final Sweet Pea with the head in place and the sword in hilt. Poingy poingy. It's nice and glued in. Yeah. All's well that ends well. I took the time to use that Molotov silver just to touch this up, to chrome that up, and to chrome up the point down here. We'll see how that dries in the morning, but yep, she's looking good and done. Hey everybody, it's Friday. It's the last work day of the week. It's the last work day on these figures, and no, Baby Doll is not pulling a Mandalorian in the Book of Boba Fett. We have not stopped our main mission. We are continuing, but I gotta tell you, I'm dragging. It's Friday. I've been working on these things. I'm dragging. As a matter of fact, I'm dragging a lot. Yes, it was a labored pun. I'm sorry. It was a long road to get to a short joke. I printed out dragon heads yesterday, and this was the first run. I did 2 of them just because, And they look neat. They look great. I was concerned that they were a little small, so I printed out a larger one. And what I did was I took this file, which is freely available on the internet, and I went into my software. Now, the only thing I can really do in the software that I'm using is I can scale things up and down. It's scaling a dragon. The jokes are just making themselves. I could scale it up or down, or I can squash and stretch it. And that's what I decided to do. So I took the same file and I just stretched it horizontally. And you get this guy. Of course, I sized him up a little bit because I wasn't quite happy with the size of his head. And then I elongated it. And this is what I've come up with. And then I cut a ragged bit off the back. This was the back of it. Went like that. Actually, it went like that. So I cut this bit off. And then I wanted to make this ragged end so that I could have some guts and gore sticking out of that. But I've got it to the size I want. I took it, put it on the belt sander so that I could sand down this flat plane so that it would lay flat on the base just like this. And that's really the only reason the baby doll is here, is so I can make sure that I am sizing it on the base the right way. And then when time comes, I will glue it down and do it like I did with the Nazi head and make the gore and the grime come out of it. In this case, it will be red because it's a creature. It's not the same as having human blood. It's creature blood. But I'll do some of that. But now that I'm happy with the size of this, and I'll worry about the position once I've got all of the ladies stacked together. I think it's going to end up being something like that. Then I can start painting this, but I want to get make sure it fits on the base and make sure everybody's happy with that. So now I can remove her and concentrate just on working on the dragon head. Alrighty, we've got something appropriately two-toned, and we're going to let this dry. Actually, I think we're going to go ahead and spray inside the mouth and then let the whole thing dry. But this is how it starts. Alright, pardon the noise, but we have got the head of the dragon, the baby dragon, all painted up. I used some of the iridescent green on there, and it's a fantasy. It's gonna, well, all dragons are fantasy. Let's not be kidding ourselves. So the colors are a little bit heightened, but I'm ready to lay this out on the cobblestones here, and I'm gonna do it like I did the other day with the Nazi, and I'm gonna mix up some 15-minute epoxy and put some vicious reds and oranges in it. We're going to put a pool of it going around his mouth down here, and then the rest of it will be oozing out of his back where it was cut off, his decapitated area. Okay, that went over a little quicker and a little bit better than I was hoping for. I mixed up the 15-minute epoxy with some of these different red colors that I put in here, and as I was stirring it, I put down one little bit, which was this lighter color, and the more I stirred it and the longer it cured, the darker it got, and it started getting really warm, which is what happens when epoxy goes off. But it ended up giving me what I can only describe as this big old fat blood clot here, which I couldn't have sculpted anything to look like that. I couldn't have wished for something to look that good. I'm just enamored with it, but you'll notice it's a little darker than the stuff surrounding it. The stuff surrounding it, I was planning out, and dribbling off with the knife, and trying to make some artistic-looking pooling. But what happened on its own when it started to flash off? You got this darker stuff, and it just turned into this rubbery mass of clot, and I love it. Not that I'm ever going to start making really gory figures, because that's not my bag baby. But I can see the attraction of it. That's some neat results there. So now we're ready to bring back my baby. And since I'm all done now, I figured I would show you the ladies one by one and then try to group them together for one big class picture. And I'm trying to think of the best way. I wish I had some sort of photographic background set up. I do not have that. So you're just going to have to live with stuff in the background. And I'm going to turn this off so we don't have to listen to that anymore. But we'll start with Rocket. Here's Rocket on a turnaround. See if we can get a nice close-up on that face. Wondering how it looks without the lights on. That's kind of nice. You get a more moody thing going on. And now zoom back out and go down to the base so we can see how she's got that horrible twisted pose. But all the work on those boots. I want everybody to see all the work on those boots. And the fancy dead Nazi head. And one more go around, nice and slow, so everybody can drink in how lovely that fishnet looks. And one last close up on the face. Now, I can't take much, the sculpt itself does not look much like Jenna Malone, so there's not much I could do. And now here is Miss Sweet Pea. Make sure her nameplate is showing up. The one that started it all with his having the head on the base. That's what really set the tone for all of the extra work that I did making those things that went on the bases. But a quick turnaround here. With a zoom in on her face. Now it's a little bit better coloring because the hair, just the pose is better and you don't get that washout look. I like that pose right there where you could just see into behind her hair. This sculpt looks a little more like Abby Cornish than the other one looks like Jenna Malone, so it's a little bit easier to make it look right. If it ain't in the, if it's not in the sculpt, you can't make it happen. Okay, but yeah, the sword is in. It's nice and straight. She's looking good, even though she's a symphony of tones of black. She does look good. And then you have, zoom back out, then you have the busted up robot on the base. Busted up robot on the base. And I still think turning those weapons around 90 degrees from what they were was a better solution. But that is Sweet Pea. And here's Baby Doll. Now the only reason I bring this out is to show you the nameplate and the decapitated dragon head and how that looks on the rest of the base. Okay, so the last thing to do, I'm not going to, well, I would do a quick turn on Baby Doll, but you've seen her before. The last thing to do is to set the three ladies up in formation, so to speak. And standing way back here is the only way to get everybody in the pose. And I can't put them on a singular turntable, so I just have to kind of move around. But there you go. And Rocket does come a little close with her weapon arm to Baby Doll, but since they're all friends, then we don't have to worry about them injuring each other. I am fully expecting that the final two will eventually be made, and that would be Blondie and Amber, and then they would go on either side. I think that they would go either side because that would satisfy my symmetry, with her being platinum blonde, these two being regular blonde, and both Amber and Blondie are brunettes. Blondie, believe it or not, is very dark hair, almost black haired, and Amber is certainly dark brown hair. So that would make the nice symmetry to put them on either side of that. But when those will be made, who knows? We may never know when those will come out. But I have to say, I think I'm getting better, especially at the eyes. I'm looking back now at Baby Doll's eyes, and they're not quite as nice as Sweet Pea's. But then again, that's in the sculpt. I gotta say, the 95% of that is in the sculpt. Those eyes were very easy to paint, and it was because they were so beautifully engineered and designed. And I think that's going to do it for our 3-week odyssey into the realm of Sucker Punch. I cannot wait till the other two figures come out, because I really want to see this project come to a logical conclusion. I think I've discovered my niche for where the 3D printer is going to start fitting into everything. I really liked being able to go in and augment these kits with a little 3D printing. Now granted, they're all 3D printed kits, but I mean going in and augmenting the bases and doing the extra bits, that added some fun, because I have to tell you, there's only so much black paint a guy can paint before he just starts climbing the walls and going so having something, having an extra ooze, an extra zhuzh, by making the bloody snake or dragon head, or the gory Nazi helmet, that really broke up all of the, I won't say tediousness, but the not so fun of all of that black painting. Finding solutions for the fishnet, that was an aha moment that I was happy to have. I gotta say, the painting of these eyes, I think I'm getting better at doing that, but that's 95% in the sculpt. If the sculpt is good, you're gonna get good results, and if your sculpt is bad, there's no real way to add that unless you resculpt. But I'm really happy with doing the extra 3D printed work on the bases, the dragon head, the Nazi head. I cannot wait until, like I say, the other two are here, so that we can finish out this entire tableau of lovely ladies. But that's it. Don't worry. Next week we will be back to space. I got a kit lined up. That's probably going to be a 1-week build. Back to more familiar territory. Back to the inky black void. So until then, y'all be good. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Be safe. Be smart. Learn diction. Don't talk with marbles in your mouth. And be back next time.